When people imagine a very intelligent mind, they usually picture someone loud. The one who talks first, answers fastest, corrects everyone at the table, and never seems to doubt a single thing they say. It is a confident image, and it is almost entirely wrong. A lot of the sharpest minds are close to the opposite of that picture. They are quiet in meetings. They hang back in groups. They second-guess themselves long after everyone else has moved on. They often feel a half step out of place, even in a room full of people they genuinely like. If that sounds a little like you, this is not a coincidence, and it is not a flaw in you. It is a pattern. Real intelligence tends to leave the same fingerprints on a personality again and again across very different people, and most of those fingerprints do not look impressive from the outside. They look like overthinking. They look like avoiding people. They look like starting things and never quite finishing them. But from the inside, each one is doing a job, and once you can see the job, the trait stops looking like a defect and starts looking like a cost you are always paying without knowing it. Over the next 20 minutes or so, I want to walk you through 11 of these signs, slowly, one at a time. Not to flatter you, and not to hand you a label to wear, just to show you the machinery underneath habits you may have spent years being told to fix. Some of these will fit you closely, almost uncomfortably so. Some will not fit you at all, and that is completely fine. You are allowed to recognize yourself in 3 of them and set the rest aside. So let us begin with the one people tend to notice first, usually before they notice anything else about you. Sign 1, the pull toward quiet. From the outside, this one reads as antisocial. You cancel plans you actually agreed to. You go quiet at parties and drift toward the edge of the room. You need a whole evening alone to recover from a day that everyone else seemed to find perfectly ordinary. To the people around you, it can look like you do not like them, or worse, that you think you are somehow above them. Usually it is neither. Picture what a mind like this is doing during a normal day out in the world. It is running analysis the entire time. Reading the room, tracking 3 conversations at once, noticing the thing that was said and the thing that was very carefully not said, catching the shift in someone's tone before they even know it happened. That takes energy, and does not stop just because the setting is supposed to be fun. Being around people is not restful for that kind of mind. It is work, even when it is work you enjoy. Solitude is where the processing finally gets to catch up. It is where the noise settles, and the thinking that got interrupted 100 times during the day can finally finish a thought. So the craving for an empty room is not a rejection of anyone. It is maintenance. The same way a muscle that worked hard all day needs rest before it can lift anything again, a mind that reads everything needs real silence before it can read anything well. If you have ever felt guilty for wanting to be alone after time with people you love, this is why, and the guilt was never fair. You were not being cold or distant. You were recovering from a lot of quiet work that nobody saw. The quiet is not you shutting down, it is you refueling. Sign 2, the mind that won't power down. Here is the version people complain about, sometimes to your face. You lie in bed and your thoughts simply will not stop. You replay a conversation from 4 years ago and cringe at a sentence nobody else remembers. You solve problems that nobody asked you to solve. You cannot sit through a quiet moment in a waiting room or a car ride without your head rushing in to fill it. People call this overthinking, and they say it like it is a bad habit, the kind you could just drop if you tried a little harder, but it is not really a habit at all. It is what a pattern-seeking mind does when there is nothing in front of it to work on. Intelligence, in large part, is the drive to find the shape underneath things, the rule, the hidden connection, the reason a thing happened the way it did. That drive does not politely switch off at bedtime just because you would like to sleep. So it turns inward and goes looking for something to chew on, and what is lying around at midnight is usually your own memories, your own mistakes, your own questions that never got answered. The cost of this is real and worth being honest about. It shows up as trouble falling asleep. It shows up as a restlessness in quiet moments, a low hum in the background that never fully goes silent. But here is the other half that people miss. The very same engine that keeps you awake at 2 in the morning is the one that notices the small detail everyone else walked straight past in daylight. The mind that will not rest and the mind that solves the thing nobody else could are not 2 different minds. You do not get one without the other. That is the trade. So far, notice something quiet. Not one of these looks like intelligence from the outside. Hold on to that, because it only gets truer from here. Sign 3, feeling too much. There is an old myth that highly logical people are cold, that the sharper the mind gets, the flatter and more distant the heart becomes, as if thinking and feeling sit on opposite ends of the same seesaw. For a lot of intelligent people, the truth runs the other way, and it can be genuinely exhausting. You feel things at a volume other people do not seem to reach. A sad story stays with you for days after everyone else has forgotten it. A small unkindness you witnessed in a shop can sit in your chest for hours. You pick up on a friend's mood before they've said a single word, and then you carry that mood around as if it belonged to you. This is not weakness, and it is not you being dramatic. It runs on the exact same wiring as the thinking does. A mind built to notice fine detail and read patterns does not only do that with numbers and ideas, it does it with people constantly, whether you want it to or not. It reads the tightness in a voice, the pause that lasted a beat too long, the smile that did not reach the eyes, the thing sitting quietly behind the thing that was actually said. And once you have read all of that, you cannot easily unfeel what you now know. So the depth you feel is not something separate from how you think. It is the same instrument, simply pointed at the human world instead of the abstract one. It costs you more than it costs most people. It also means you almost never misread the ones who truly matter to you. Feeling deeply is not the price you pay for a sharp mind. It is part of the same edge. Sign 4. The comfort of not knowing. Watch a certain kind of person in an argument and you will notice something. They almost never say those 3 small words, I don't know. They are sure about everything from politics to medicine to whatever came up 2 minutes ago. Now watch someone who actually knows a subject deeply, someone who has spent years inside it, and you will hear I don't know far more often than you would expect. That is not a lack of confidence. It is calibration. There is a well-known pattern behind this, sometimes called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and it is far simpler than the name makes it sound. When you know very little about a subject, you cannot yet see how much of it is missing from your view, so you feel certain, because from where you stand there is nothing visible to be unsure about. The more you actually learn, the more you start to see the edges of your own knowledge, the wide dark area beyond what you understand, and the more careful you naturally become. So the person who keeps saying maybe, it depends, I am not sure yet, let me think about that, is very often not the least informed one in the room. They are the one who can see how large the subject really is. If you have ever felt slow or unsure standing next to someone who seemed completely, effortlessly certain, it is worth quietly asking which of you was actually looking at the whole picture. And if this one does not describe you, that is not a failing either. Some people are simply decisive by nature, and decisiveness has a real strength of its own. But if you tend to live in the land of, well, it is complicated, you are in far better company than the loudest voice in the room. Certainty is easy. Doubt is usually the more educated answer. 4 signs in, here is a small thing to sit with. Every one of these is a trait the world quietly rewards you for hiding. Sign 5, alone in a full room. This is where the pattern starts to ache a little. It is one thing to enjoy being alone by choice. It is a very different thing to be surrounded by people and still feel completely, invisibly by yourself. You know the scene. You are at the dinner, the party, the family gathering, and the conversation is perfectly fine. It is pleasant and warm and easy, and yet something inside you is quietly starving the entire time. You want to talk about the thing you read last week, the idea that has been turning over in your head for days, the question that actually keeps you awake at night, and you can feel almost immediately that this is simply not the room for it. So instead you smile and you talk about the weather and the traffic and the show that everyone is watching, and you drive home at the end of the night feeling like you spoke for hours and somehow said nothing at all. This is not snobbery, and it does not mean you think you are too good for small talk. It is a mismatch of appetite. A mind that runs on ideas gets hungry for a certain depth of conversation, and that depth is rarer than any of us would like to admit. Most rooms are not built for it, and that is nobody's fault. So the loneliness you feel in the middle of a crowd is not really about the people at all. They may be lovely. It is about the depth you were quietly hoping to reach and could not find a door into. If you have ever driven home from a full and friendly evening feeling strangely, hollowly empty, you already know this one from the inside. Being surrounded is not the same as being met. We are a little past the halfway mark now. If you have been counting how many of these are you, let the number go. The count was never the point. Sign 6. Changing your mind on purpose. In most places, changing your mind is quietly treated as losing. You said one thing last month, and now you believe something different, and someone throws the old version back at you like they caught you in a lie. So a lot of people learn to dig in. They defend the thing they already said long after they have stopped believing it, because backing down in public feels like weakness, like handing someone a win. Here is the quieter kind of strength that runs the other way. Some people can hold a belief loosely enough to actually put it down when a better one arrives. They can sit and listen to a strong argument against their own position and feel something closer to relief than defeat. because getting nearer to the truth matters more to them than being seen to be right in the moment. That is cognitive flexibility, and from the outside it is very easy to mistake for having no spine, no firm convictions at all. It is much closer to the opposite. It actually takes a steady and secure sense of self to say, out loud, I was wrong about that, and here is what I think now instead. A fragile ego cannot afford to do that. The whole point was never to win the argument you started with. The point was to end up standing in the right place. So if you change your mind when the facts in front of you change, you are not flaky and you are not unreliable. You are simply paying attention to reality. Being consistent is easy. Being right is worth more. Sign 7. Watching instead of performing. Look closely at any group of people and you will see two kinds. There are the ones who perform. They tell the story, hold the floor, land the joke, steer the energy of the whole table. And then there are the ones sitting slightly back, saying very little, watching all of it unfold. From the outside, the quiet watcher can easily look shy or bored or checked out. Far more often, they are the single most switched-on person in the room they are gathering. Who quietly defers to whom? Who went tense the moment a certain name came up? Who laughed a half-beat too late to mean it? What this group is really about underneath all the pleasant noise on the surface. A mind wired to read patterns treats a room full of people as the most interesting puzzle available anywhere, and you do not solve a good puzzle by shouting over the top of it. You solve it by watching it carefully. And this is worth being clear about, because it is easy to confuse. Watching is not the same thing as judging. The quiet watcher is usually far slower to condemn anyone than the loudest person at the table, precisely because they have seen how many different reasons a person can have for doing the very same thing. If you are the one who talks the least and notices the most, you are not on the outside of the room looking in. You are reading the room from the best seat in it. Some people speak because they want to be seen. Some watch because they want to understand. Stay with me. The signs from here tend to land harder because they are the ones people carry in private. Sign 8, putting off what matters most. This one gets called laziness more than almost anything else on this list, and it is one of the most badly misread things a person can do. Here is the shape of it. You have a project that actually means something to you, the one you truly care about, the one that would matter if you finished it, and somehow that is the exact one you keep not starting. You will happily clean the whole kitchen. You will answer the easy emails that could have waited. You will do anything small and safe and finishable, while the one important thing sits there in the corner, untouched, week after week. From the outside it looks like pure avoidance or a lack of discipline. Very often it is the precise opposite of not caring. It is caring far too much. A mind that can clearly see many possible outcomes can also see, in vivid detail, all the ways the thing could fall short, every version that would disappoint you, every flaw the finished work might carry, every way it could fail to match the picture in your head. And that kind of vision is heavy to hold. It is genuinely hard to begin something when your own imagination has already walked you 10 different ways it could turn out not quite good enough. So the delay is not indifference, and is not weakness of will. It is perfectionism wearing the convincing mask of laziness, and it tends to attach itself most stubbornly to the work you care about the most, because that is exactly the work with the most to lose. If you keep stalling on the thing that matters while breezing effortlessly through the things that do not, look closely and honestly at what you are actually afraid of, it is almost never the work itself. It is the gap between the perfect version living in your head and the imperfect one your hands can actually make today. You are not lazy. You are scared of doing it badly, only a few left, and these are the quiet ones. They rarely get said out loud, even to the people we trust. Sign 9, boredom with the same thing twice. On the surface, this one looks a lot like flackiness or a fear of commitment. You throw yourself completely into something new, a job, a hobby, an entire field of study. You go deep and you go fast, and then the moment you have genuinely understood it, the interest quietly drains right out of you. People watching from outside see someone who cannot commit, who quits the second things stop being new and shiny, who is forever chasing the next thing over the horizon. But what is actually happening underneath is far more specific than that. A mind that runs on figuring things out gets its real reward from the figuring itself, not from the repeating afterward. Once the problem has been solved and the pattern has become clear and obvious, there is suddenly nothing left there to feed on, and doing the same solved thing over and over again starts to feel less like a comfortable routine and more like slowly being starved. That is the reason repetitive work drains you so fast and so completely, while a hard, fresh, unsolved problem can light you up out of absolutely nowhere on a gray afternoon. It is not that you cannot focus. Your focus is fine. It is that your focus is always out hunting for something worth biting into. The trick here, if there even is one, is not to force yourself to somehow fall in love with repetition. It is to keep a problem hard enough and new enough in front of you that the engine always has real work to do. Boredom, for a mind like yours, is not a character flaw. It is hunger with nothing left to eat. Sign 10. The quiet certainty that you are a fraud. This is probably the strangest one of them all, because it shows up most powerfully in the exact people who have the very least reason to feel it. You do the work, you get the result. People trust you, they rely on you, they come to you. And underneath every bit of it sits a small, steady voice that whispers you got lucky, you fooled them somehow, you are not really as capable as they all seem to think, and one of these days they are finally going to find out. There is a name for this particular feeling. It is often called imposter syndrome, and the genuinely cruel part is who tends to be haunted by it. It is almost never the people comfortably coasting along on pure confidence. It is the ones who can see, with painful clarity, exactly how much they still do not know, the ones who quietly hold themselves to a standard that most people around them never even think to set. The very same honesty that stops you from overrating a subject you barely know is the honesty that stops you from overrating yourself. So you quietly discount every win as luck and magnify every gap as proof. And you walk around feeling like a fraud the whole time you are doing perfectly real, perfectly solid work. If that voice lives somewhere in you, here is something genuinely worth holding on to. The people who never once, not for a second, doubt themselves are usually not the ones actually worth trusting. The doubt is not evidence that you are a fraud. It is evidence that you are paying close attention to the truth, even when the hardest truth to look at is the one about yourself. And if you do not feel this one at all, then good, hold on tightly to that steadiness. The doubt was never the verdict on you. One sign left. Slow down for this last one with me. It is the quiet center that the other 10 circle around. Sign 11. Never quite belonging. Underneath all of the others, if you dig down far enough, there is usually this one waiting. A quiet, persistent sense that wherever you happen to be, you are somehow slightly outside of it. Not rejected, not pushed away, not bullied, nothing so sharp or dramatic as that. Just a half step removed from the middle of things, as if you are watching your own life from a seat somewhere near the back of the room rather than living it from the center of the floor. You can be surrounded by good friends, in a place you actually chose for yourself, doing work you honestly like, and still feel, underneath it all, like a visitor who simply learned the local customs well enough to pass. This is the deep it that ties the whole long list together into one thing. The pull toward solitude, the mind that will not rest, the loneliness felt in a full crowd, the quiet certainty of being a fraud, all of them point back here in the end to the small distance between you and the room you are standing in. And here is the gentlest and truest way I know to hold it. That distance is not a defect buried somewhere inside you. It is the natural cost of a particular way of moving through the world, a way that watches and questions, and feels everything, and reads the pattern running underneath the surface of things. You are standing close enough to see absolutely everything, and just far enough back to never fully dissolve into it and disappear. Some people get to live comfortably inside the world. You have spent your whole life quietly watching it instead, and yes, that seat carries a real loneliness in it that never entirely goes away. But it also carries a view of things that no one standing in the warm middle of the crowd will ever get to see. You do not belong the way that other people belong, you belong the way an observer does. So let us go all the way back to where we started this, to that loud, certain confident person we all picture the instant someone says the word intelligent. By now, having walked through all 11 of these, you might finally see why that picture is almost always wrong. The traits that actually tend to come with a deep and busy mind are the quiet ones, the inward ones, the ones nobody puts on a poster. Needing to be alone, thinking far too much, doubting yourself long after you should have stopped. Feeling, always, like you are standing just slightly outside the room. Not one of them looks impressive from the outside, and most of them are the exact things people spend their lives quietly apologizing for and being told to fix. But every single one is the unmistakable fingerprint of a mind that is doing far, far more than it ever lets onto the world. If a lot of these felt like you tonight, uncomfortably like you, then I want to leave you with something plain and honest before you go. Intelligence, the real kind, is often heavy to carry through a life. It can make you lonelier, more restless, and much harder on yourself than you will ever actually deserve to be. It is not purely an advantage, and it is not purely a burden either. It is both of those things at the very same time, tangled together, and slowly learning to carry it well is its own quiet, lifelong skill. And if only 2 or 3 of these signs really fit you, then that is honest, and that is genuinely more than enough. You never needed all 11 of them to be a mind worth understanding. So before you close this and go back to your night, do one small thing for me down in the comments. Tell me which of the 11 felt the most like you, and which single one did not fit you at all. I actually read them, and the pattern hiding inside those answers is always more interesting than any list I could ever write on my own.